Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to episode 133 of More Than Anxiety. If this is your first time here, I'm so excited that you chose to join me today. And if you're back again for more, welcome. It's always great to have you back. This week, I want to talk to you about a topic that keeps coming up in my new boundaries and balance audit that I've been doing with people. If you don't know what that is, it's a really quick assessment that I do with people. It's not a sales call or a coaching call. It's just a really great way for them or you to be able to see what's going well in their lives, what's not going well, and really where they need to focus their attention and their intention. And I see a lot of recurring themes. I see this happen in my coaching, and now I'm seeing it happen in my audits. And this audit's still fairly new, but what I've noticed already coming up with three different people in about 3 days is that we're all talking about layoffs and economic and political uncertainty. So if you are feeling overwhelmed by what's going on in the political climate that we're in right now, if you're noticing that you are seeing layoffs in a private corporation, in a small business, or if it's a bigger issue like a government layoff, let's talk about how you can cope with that uncertainty and the anxiety that comes along with it. I've talked with multiple women who have recently mentioned that they've been laid off or they're expecting a layoff, and it's really causing them to put a stop on their expectations for what they can achieve, to feel really anxious about all different areas of their life. And this is normal because career instability can bring up a ton of anxiety. It can bring up identity struggles, and it can make you worry about your finances, even when you still have a job and that nothing is 100%. But sometimes knowing that things aren't 100% is really the problem. So today we're going to talk about common reactions to layoffs or fearing that you're going to be laid off. We're also going to talk about the truth about what happens inside your brain and body when things are uncertain, how you can reframe what's going on around you without faking it. I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm not talking about pretending like everything is like sunshine and rainbows when it's not. And of course, I'm going to talk to you about how coaching can help and what I can do to help you make it through a layoff or to navigate what happens as you fear the layoff coming. So let's start with the emotional impact of a job loss and just that uncertainty about what do I do now? If you've lost your job or if you're afraid you're going to lose your job, this isn't just about income. It impacts your identity, it impacts your self worth. It has all of these factors that make everything else in your life feel very wobbly. I'm going to invite you to go back to episode 119, where I talked with Laura Krauss. She's the author of the Layoff Cooties. It's Them, Not You. And she talked extensively in that episode about her experience being laid off last year or 2 years ago, and she turned it into a book. It's a fantastic read. I'll hook the book link in the show notes so that you can grab that on Amazon. But looking at her struggle and thoughts that she had, and really noticing that so much of what she was experiencing was grief, losing her coworkers who had become her friends, losing her identity, and grieving all of those things at once. So, some really common themes and thoughts that you might experience that she also speaks about in her book is, am I good enough? Or as a woman, sometimes we say, what did I not do? What did I do wrong? When it's not you, it's them, which is in the title of her book, right? Or another thought you might have is, what if I can't find another job? What if people see that I've been laid off and they think that I'm a terrible employee, or they don't even invite me in to hear about what I bring to the table? And another thought, will I have to start all the way over? I've been working to build my presence in this career for so long. Am I going to have to start at the bottom of the ladder again? These are all really common thoughts. Your brain's just searching for answers. And in the meantime, we can't really have them, can we? Everything's uncertain, it's constantly shifting, and we don't know what's going to happen next. That's a difficult position for anyone to be in. Brains love certainty, and we are just in a place and time right now where a lot of things feel like they're just floating around us. It's awful, isn't it? I know that so many people are dealing with it, whether it's about layoffs or anything else. There's a lot of crazy going on out there. So you might notice that this doesn't just stay around layoffs. You might notice that suddenly everything feels unstable, right? You might notice how suddenly you're arguing more with your partner or your spouse, and like now that feels shaky. Or you might notice that suddenly you're feeling depressed or more anxious or more stressed out or more lonely, and you just don't know what to do. Maybe you've never felt that way before, and all of a sudden it's just blindsided you. You also might notice that you used to feel really confident and suddenly you feel like a failure because you've lost something that felt certain or that was so much a part of what you've worked for and what you've tried so hard to achieve, and suddenly it's gone. So all of those feelings, let's just start by understanding that those are very normal feelings and they're not going to last forever, but you might need some help getting through them, and we'll get to that part. So let's talk about what's going on here. What's happening, especially with women. And guys, if you're listening to this episode, it's not that I don't care if you get laid off. I definitely do. You a lot of times are the major breadwinner of the family. Not always, but sometimes. I'm not forgetting about you. I realize this is tough, and of course, we can talk as well, but I am going to speak specifically to women right now and talk about the cultural expectations and some of the gender roles that happen when women get laid off and when women lose their positions at work. Because we're also working really hard, sometimes two full-time jobs, especially if we're at home with kids, taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, making sure everything flows smoothly at home, and going to work in a career that we love, in a position that we love. That's a lot. And I just want to speak to why women in particular can be struggling in this period of layoffs. One thing is that there's a standard for us that doesn't necessarily exist so much for men, where we're supposed to be the good employee, right? We're often socialized to be team players. Oh, it's okay. I'll do it for you. It's okay. We'll all work together and pull together. That's a great characteristic. Having a team and knowing that your team can count on you, that's a big deal. Knowing that you're necessary, it's an amazing feeling. But sometimes that turns into being people pleasers in the workplace, doesn't it? And when you get laid off, when those layoffs happen, you might feel like you failed. You might take it on as something that you're responsible for. I let the team down, so I'm the one they let go. My boss didn't think I was pulling my weight, so of course I should have done more. Even if the decision was entirely outside of your control, you might notice that you think that you weren't good enough. And I just want to offer that that's not true, or not necessarily true. Another thing that can happen, especially with women, is that there's a double standard for us when we're looking for jobs. There's a statistic I'm going to share with you. It's terribly annoying. It just burns me up. But research shows that women tend to apply for jobs when they feel they are checking off all the boxes. They have meet 100% of whatever the standard is. If there are 10 things, they're going to nail all 10, then they will apply. But that's not true for guys. Guys are only aiming for 60%. After, even after a layoff, they'll be like, check, check, check. I got like 6 out of 10. That's amazing. They apply. So why are we not applying with 6 out of 10? They're doing it. There's probably a lot of answers to that. But let's just notice that we might have more hesitation after being laid off. And that can make that job hunt feel even more stressful and more difficult, especially if we're not applying to as many places because we have a higher standard of what we're supposed to be doing to be that good employee or to be successful. So women are often the ones who are supporting their coworkers through some really tough things that happen, whether it's a layoff or things that are happening at home. They're checking in, they're helping them process their emotions and do all of these amazing things just instinctually. So when they're laid off or they're struggling, they might not have that same level of support that they had from their coworkers when they're at home. Now, they may have an amazing friend group that they go and work things through with, and that's fantastic. But sometimes having that woman at work who just gets it is a big deal, isn't it? Like your work bestie who you're like, oh, this person, I would not survive the day sometimes if it weren't for them. I think we've all had one. I know that I've had one at every single job I've ever had. But when you're laid off and suddenly that person's not there, unless you are intentional about finding them, and sometimes that's difficult too, especially if you start to feel depressed or if money's tight and you don't feel like you can go out for lunches and things like that, that can disappear and that can be really tough to deal with. We also have caregiving responsibilities and other financial stresses. So we have a lot of working moms. That wasn't necessarily the case back in the day, 50 years ago when I was a little kid. But if a mom loses her job, she might worry not just about the finances, but also about how she's going to pay for childcare. Or who's going to watch the kids so I can go to this job interview if I get another interview. She also might be perceived if she takes time off before finding a new position as someone who just decided to lay around or, oh, she wasn't really doing anything, which 100% is not true because if you're at home taking care of your kids, you're doing a lot. You still have all of those responsibilities. So deciding how quickly do I apply? How do I decide what I want to apply for? And what am I going to be perceived as can be a big deal, especially if you're a mom. Now, if you're my age again, let's say you're a Gen Xer and suddenly you're looking at, you might still have kids at home. I mean, I still have two teenagers in my house, but you also might have aging parents. Now, I am lucky enough that both of my parents are healthy, they're active, they're doing all the things, but I still worry about them because they're not young anymore, right? I mean, they're doing fantastic, but I do worry. But I also worry about my teenagers. So if you're in that sandwich generation, whether you're a Gen X, Xennial, maybe an older millennial, and you notice that you're balancing kids and aging parents, that job loss isn't just about your own future suddenly. If you are supporting those people, suddenly you're worrying about how do I support my parents? How do I support my kids? How do I do all of these things when I don't have any income? Yes, you have more time, and that's a gift. But that gift is only great if it's not taking away from the other areas of your life that you do have to still be responsible for. And then, of course, there's that whole unpaid labor thing where we're doing all of the work of two jobs, but really now not being paid at all. When before you were doing two jobs, but at least getting paid for one. So even if you were earning less than your husband or your partner in the beginning, you might still be responsible for the majority of that household work. And that layoff can make you feel a lot of pressure just to make up for the job that you used to do. So you might find yourself trying to do more at home so that you feel more important or like you're giving back. So, taking on more at home, but leaving not very much time to take care of yourself is going to lead you to feeling more anxious, more depressed, and even more resentful, which makes it, again, harder to get the momentum that you need to apply for that job because the more you get down on yourself, that can be really unmotivating. This is where that audit that I mentioned at the beginning can come in really, really handy so that we can see, hey, these are the things that it looks like you're really liking right now. This is what's going well for you, even in the middle of a layoff. And then we might look at things that, like, this is where you're really struggling. Like, you're feeling spent at the end of the day. You're doing all the things. You're not asking for help. You're not putting down boundaries, whatever that looks like for you. And then we can say, look at this thing, this reoccurring theme here. It keeps coming up. That's what needs your attention. That's where we focus. Again, this is not a coaching call. It's not a consultation call. It's just a chance for you to see what's going on in your life. It's a free service and it's super fun. It takes about a half hour. So I will put that link in the show notes as well. And there's another thing I want to talk about specifically for women and why the layoff situation can feel so challenging for you in particular. You might have had this idea that there is a perfect career path and that you were on it. Women often feel like they have to prove that they're making all of the right career choices, and you may have stacked up a ton of evidence that you were killing it, and then it was all cut off at the knees. So a layoff or even just a job change that you chose can feel like you're falling behind. Like, okay, I chose to do this, but now I have to catch up. Or I got laid off and now I'm going to be behind all of my peers. It might even be a thought, or I made a mistake, or something like I just don't know how to get back to where I was. But I just want to offer a question to you. What if you're exactly where you need to be? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying be grateful that you were laid off. That would be insane. And we know it's hard and we know it's really impossible. But the fact that you were laid off does not mean that you are falling behind. It just means that you are not in the same position that you were before. Does that mean you're going to go back in further behind than you were? Not necessarily. You may find a job that takes you forward. So remember, the idea that you're falling behind is only a thought. It's not necessarily true. Something else you might have that would really feel like pressure that you have to have everything figured out right now is this fear of judgment. And women tend to worry about how being laid off will affect their reputation, especially in those competitive fields where they have to continue to network, they have to have visibility, they have to be up on their toes all the time. And when that's gone, you might wonder what people think about you. Where did she go? Did she just quit? Oh no, I heard she got laid off. So she's probably just at home, like relaxing and taking it easy. That's maybe true, but it's maybe not. So with all of this happening, you might be internalizing everything and you might just be sitting there stewing in all of these thoughts and emotions that come along with being laid off. Instead of seeing something like an economic downturn, like a drop in the stock market that we've seen just yesterday and today when I'm recording this, or political instability as a big systemic issue, or anything else that's happening around you that's led you to the place that you are, a lot of women will just personalize it. And they'll wonder again what they did or what they could have done differently instead of recognizing that it's a bigger picture. We cannot control what the government is doing on the day-to-day basis or what the stock market does all by ourselves. I mean, we can play the game, right? We can be activists, we can buy and sell stock, we can do all of those things. But us personally, we're not responsible for that. So just recognizing that what happened to lead you to this place where you're laid off or fearing the laid off is outside of you can get you to a place where you start to let go of control. And that feels scary, right? So here's what happens and how we generally react to uncertainty, and not just economic uncertainty or political instability, but really anything that's not certain. Because if you like to have control, and brains generally like to have control, and you don't have that, you're going to go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Let's talk about what that looks like. If you are in fight mode, if you notice that you're keyed up, and one of the things that I do when I'm coaching clients is really talk about how does your body feel? Do you feel all of those stress feelings or those anxious feelings? Let's figure out what's going on inside your head because your brain will react to how your body feels. So if you notice you're in fight, it might look like working harder to try to stay on that. I will not be laid off. I'm going to work my ass off to keep this position. Maybe, unless it's outside of your company's control and somebody says you have to let them all go, then you're going to work yourself to death for no reason. If you are overworking to prove your worth, if you are saying yes to everything someone asks you to do, if you are staying late multiple nights a week, if you are working at home, if you are coming in early and doing all the things, that is fighting your way to not be laid off. And it may not work, especially if something's outside of your control or your boss's control. Your boss may love you and want to keep you on. It may not be their decision. You might be in flight, though, if you start avoiding job searches. Let's say you've been laid off and you're like, oh no, I am so happy that I'm not working right now. Do you know I have needed this break for so long? We need to talk about that too, because if you are at a place where you're like, thank God I got laid off, you maybe don't want to go back to that career that you missed so much anyway. But are you avoiding job searches? Are you completely disengaged? Like, I don't even want to look at the news. I don't want to talk about jobs. I don't want to look about any of this. Are you pretending things are fine? Or that it's a relief? Any of those things are all flight. And then freeze would be getting stuck overthinking, analyzing every worst case scenario, like I'll never have another job. Everyone's going to think I'm a loser. I can't even look for another job. Someone offers you a job and you're like, no, 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 I can't do that because your brain is telling you don't get another job because this could happen again and you would have to feel this way twice. These are just really sneaky ways that your brain tries to keep you from feeling horrible or from being hurt or from being disappointed. And these responses make sense, right? It makes sense that you would try to work harder, or it makes sense that you would just avoid thinking about jobs for a while, or that you would just say, oh no, everything's fine. I'm enjoying this. But they're also keeping you stuck. So we have to recognize what's going on inside your bodies and the patterns that are happening so that you can start finding a solution. So let's take a minute and talk about the reality of the situation and feeling out of control. The truth is that the economy and the political climate are absolutely jacked right now. At least today when I'm recording this. I hope that by the time this comes out, this is old news. Some things are going to be outside of our control, but some things are inside of our control. And that includes how you think, how you respond to what's going on around you, and taking care of yourself in the process of working through things. So I told you that I had been doing these audits, and I just want to share a quick story about someone I did an audit with this week. This woman came to me. She's a solid foundation in almost every area of her life. She's brilliant. She's in the career that she loves. She's not currently laid off. She's taking care of herself, like working out, making home cooked meals. She's going out with her friends. She's got a boyfriend. She's got all the things. Like she's doing amazing. And I would say that 90% of the audit that we went through was celebrating all the things that were going well for her. Everything. But this one thing kept sneaking in. And she said, I mean, really, everything's going well, but I am a little worried about my job. I mean, I know she's in a research position, and she was saying that she knew there were going to be cuts to research. And she was concerned that her position in particular, because it is at a university, would be cut due to government, like government layoffs. So even with her really strong decision-making skills, she was decisive, you guys. This is something that I am still working towards, is being as decisive as this woman was. And she had all of these things going well. She was still really iffy on what was happening inside of her career. And she's like, I don't know what to do. This is what I've worked for. And this is a really common experience. When one area of your life feels off or shaky, it starts to make you question other things. Like, watch out over there. I feel really good about this. I mean, I have this great partner, this great relationship, but I mean, I think things are going really well, but I don't know. He's getting ready to start this new job, and now I'm not super sure about it. Or I feel really good about being able to go out and hang out with my friends, but if I get laid off, if they lose this position, I'm not going to have the money to do that. I'm not sure, how I would handle that or keep that social situation up. I'd love to be able to go out. I'm kind of a foodie, but I won't be able to do those things. So I don't know, but I feel really good about my life right now. But that worrying in advance for what might be coming down the line was showing up in her audit. So what we had to do was talk about, what can you control? What's happening right now in this moment? How do you want to respond and prepare in a positive way instead of letting yourself go down that rabbit hole of worry? So we had to really reframe what was happening and where she was. By the time we got off the call, she had a focus point. She knew where she needed to go. And this took 30 minutes, 25 minutes. It's super quick. So let's talk about how you move from feeling anxious to finding opportunity. So if we go back to the layoff cooties, and that also in episode 119 of this podcast, we can start to look at that stigma of being laid off and why women feel shame even when it's not their fault, and scramble to take care of everyone in their family. We also can really take a look at the hidden opportunities in a forced career change. I like the idea. Somehow, forced career change sounds less threatening than laid off. I don't know if it's the career change part. Forced doesn't sound great to me, but the idea that there's an opportunity in this, hiding in it, and maybe underneath a lot of really intense negative feelings, but it's there. Something else is coming. And you might fear that it's going to be awful, but what if it's not? What if it's amazing? That's all in that episode 119 and in the Layoff Cooties. But then also just how to reframe, or how Laura reframed her job loss as a shift and not an ending. So, what I really want to offer to you here is that between this podcast and kind of counteracting and looking at the things you can control and explaining why you feel the way you feel, I want to invite you to check out Laura's book. I know I keep saying this, to get these other half of the look, because Laura has actual layoff experience, whereas I do not. Hers is definitely like a personal history, and mine is me talking about this more as a coach who can help you through the process. But there are some key mindset shifts that we share here. And one is going from, what if I never find a job or another job, to, what if this is the push I needed to find something better? Notice that I didn't say, I feel great about this because something better is coming. It's just a question. What if I never find another job is very anxiety provoking, short term, in the moment, fear based. But what if this is what I needed to find something better? One is curious, and one is shutting off your thinking ability. So let's be curious. What if this is the push you need? It may not be the push you wanted or the push that you saw coming, but it might be something where the universe is like pushing you down the road. Maybe. Here's another one you can do. I don't have any control over anything. This is all outside of my control. Partially true. You didn't have control of being laid off, but you do have control of how you prepare, if you can see it coming or if you're anticipating it, how you respond if it happens or when it happens, and how you move forward. All three of those things are inside of your control. That's more control than you had 2 seconds ago when you said nothing. That's a big deal. And we can really talk together in a coaching situation or in a coaching consultation about how you can create that stability and what that looks like to work with me as your coach in creating a system and really balancing out how your body feels and what's happening inside of your brain and creating a path forward to whatever happens next for you. And maybe you're like, you know what, I don't want to go back to a career like that. I can't handle it, but I always wished I had a donut shop. Whatever it is, we can look at those things then. So here's how coaching can help you. We're going to find the difference between managing uncertainty and really finding support through the process. And what I mean by that is if you are constantly putting out fires and feeling like, I just put that one out and now there's this other thing over here that feels unfamiliar or unstable or different, let's start talking about what's working and where you do feel stability. Let's just shift your focus a little bit so that you can really feel calmer and more in control. So we're going to break out of this overthinking cycle. We're going to stop thinking everything into the ground, especially because there are so many things that we can't anticipate right now. Let's stop thinking so much and start creating a plan that works for you. We're going to build some emotional resilience and we're going to learn how to get through those big, heavy emotions like grief, like sadness, like anger, like guilt, like shame, like fear. And we're going to start moving those through so that you can start focusing on hope, anticipation, curiosity, and things like that. We're also going to identify your strengths and your values, and we're going to look for next steps without going down that rabbit hole and into panic so that you start feeling calm. You notice that your body's not so anxious, your head's not spinning stories. You start to feel really confident because you're like, no, I know what I'm good at. I know what I value. I know what I bring to the table. And you're going to start creating control in your life from a place where you feel like there's not any right now. So I just want to remind you that layoffs and career shifts are really hard. I'm not faking it. I'm not pretending that you're supposed to feel good. But they do not have to determine how the rest of your life goes, even if it feels that way right now. So, if you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you are feeling like there is impending doom coming, jump on a balance and boundaries audit with me. It is free. You can go to my website. It is megandevito.com. You can read more about what it is and what it's not. And you can schedule a time right there on the front page. It's super duper simple. It takes about a half hour to 45 minutes of your time. And if you're like, oh, I'm way past that, sister, I'm just ready to go, I need a coach. Amazing. There's two ways I can coach you. One is one-on-one. This is completely personalized to you. We meet for an hour a week. You can look on my website and you can go to the Work With Me tab and you can jump on right then and there to either schedule a call to talk with me. It's called a Confidence Catalyst call, or you can just like purchase it now and be ready to go. The other option I have is a group. It's one-to-one. And if you're looking for a community, if you're just trying to find other women who tend to overthink and tend to be really ambitious, but also sabotage themselves because they're so stressed out, that's your group. It's super fun. We have weekly lesson, weekly group coaching, and a forum and a chat and all kinds of things where you can come and meet your new best friends that you never even knew you were missing. So I just want to encourage you that we will get through this and that if you are looking for help, I am right here. You can reach out anytime. If I don't talk to you this week on an audit or on a call, I will be back next week and I hope to see you again then. Take care.